Learn to stay in front of the ball. That's what Coach Cal said in his post-game press conference after getting upset by UNC-Wilmington. We're going to break down this game film, and I'm going to show you why I don't think the main issue for Kentucky was not being able to just stay in front of the ball one-on-one. So one of the things that Coach Cal said in the press conference was that guys were opening up their hips on closeouts and allowing the offense to drive straight downhill to the basket and not keeping their chest in front of the ball. Now in today's game, guarding the ball one-on-one is probably the most difficult thing that you can possibly do, which is why help defense is so important. And almost every single team has some type of help defense responsibility where you're going to have one of two things that you're going to focus on. You're either going to play pack line principles where you send the ball to the middle where guys can stunt, or you're going to force guys baseline to your rim protectors. And quite honestly, I don't think Kentucky did either one of those things well. Because in most of these one-on-one situations where a guy is responsible for cutting off the ball and not giving up either a middle drive or a baseline drive, you see very little help or stunts from the gap defenders that makes it harder for guys to drive one-on-one and get to the center of the paint where the defense is most vulnerable. And because of the 10-1-4 hand checking foul, it is asking a lot for anybody to guard the ball consistently one-on-one with no help. So what I don't understand is when guys get beat off the bounce, why doesn't Kentucky have guys who rotate over consistently to take away those drives and at least force kickouts to the perimeter? Because this action was run twice from a sideline out of bounds by UNC-Wilmington, and both times they gave up a layup because of a lack of baseline rotation help. And the reason I don't think that they lost because of their one-on-one defense and not being able to keep the ball in front is as UNC-Wilmington tried to run actions to get downhill, as you can see here with this brush screen, so that the guard can turn the corner to his right hand. In situations like this, where defenders are put basically on an island with very little help from either one of their gap defenders, they did a pretty decent job of keeping the ball in front, but Wilmington made some tough shots. And if one of the things that you're struggling with is one-on-one defense, a way that you fix that problem is find the nearest defender and have him sit in a gap and stunt the drive and force that ball handler to pass it, and you can stunt and help each other. But there were far too many possessions where guys were driving and the stunts were late and the rotation was late, and that's where Wilmington hit these shots. Because there were several possessions during the game that Kentucky played great one-on-one defense, they kept the ball out of the paint the entire possession, and they didn't give up these easy driving angles and forced Wilmington to take tough shots like these. But at some point, you're going to get beat off of the bounce no matter who you are, because defensive closeouts are one of the hardest things to do in basketball. But the thing that stood out to me during this game again was the lack of rotation and understanding help defense. Because in a situation where you do have open hips on your closeout and give up a drive, when you create stoppage like this, you need a second effort from the helpers to rotate back to their matchups, and I just feel like that didn't happen during this game. So we're going to break down the main issue that Kentucky is having right now, and it is not one-on-one defense. On every pass, there is always a closeout, and Kentucky did a decent job the entire night, even with their slower defenders, of successfully closing out and not giving up open driving lanes. But as soon as a ball screen is set, it is no longer the same situation. Unless you are switching ball screens, every time a ball screen is set, you must have help or a hedge from the screener's defender, and this is where Kentucky lost the basketball game. Their bigs kept trying to recover before they could get back in front of the ball, and that's what opened up these driving lanes to allow UNC to get to paint over and over. When a ball screen is set, the man guarding the ball has to work to get through the screen, and that's why he's typically late. So these are the three pieces of the puzzle. You have a stunt, you have a hedge, and a guy who's trying to recover. And in this situation, the stunt and the hedge need to create stoppage so that the guard can get back in front. And depending upon the type of ball screen, you might not have the stunt man, and so it's extremely important that the big who is hedging stays in front of the ball until the guard recovers. Here is a step-up ball screen, and as the guard goes to get back in front, this hedge man just leaves, never stays in front of the ball, and that's what allowed them to get straight downhill. So when Coach Cal told the media that we couldn't stay in front of the ball, It was mainly because of their ball screen coverage and their bigs. So as the on-ball defender gets beat because of the screen, this big has to stay in front of the ball until he's able to recover, and he has a built-in helper behind him. And here's another situation of a guard getting straight downhill and driving past that big for a layup before his defender can recover. It's the ball screen coverage that is giving Kentucky issues right now. You can see in this possession, every single one of these closeouts and one-on-one defense, Kentucky does a great job of sitting in front of the ball, not getting beat off the bounce, and keeping UNC outside the paint. But as soon as they decide to go into ball screens, you're going to see this same issue show up again. Because of the coverage they're running, the guard needs to get over the screen and back in front, and the big needs to show until he's able to recover. They have the same problem again. They give up a downhill drive with a bad stunt, and it turns into an and one. Now they switched this first ball screen, which was smart because it keeps the ball out of the paint. But as soon as they got back to this wing ball screen, they had more issues again. They do a better job of getting over the top, and they have a good hedge this time, but the stunt man has a bad closeout. They get driven baseline, and they're right back to the same issues of the other team touching paint for kick out threes. And even when they tried to switch ball screen coverages, they ran into the same issue. Here they tried to run lock and under, where you jam the screener and then just sprint underneath, but the guard was late getting through and the stunt didn't stop the ball, and luckily the backside defender came over and made an impressive block. But one of the biggest issues in Kentucky's ball screen coverage is their communication. As this ball screen is set, this big needs to communicate with the guard on the ball, and he says something because the on-ball defender jumps to the inside almost like he's trying to ice, but the big is in drop coverage, and that allows a straight downhill drive, which leads to a kick-out three. And they had issues like this more than once during the game. On this baseline out of bounds, UNC goes into a step-up ball screen, and the guard needs to force him into his help, and he ends up getting rejected to the middle. And once a ball handler gets here, the defense typically collapses, and they got lucky that he shot this tough mid-range rather than kicking it to the strong side corner for a three. And when this same situation happened a few minutes later, the guard was so worried about getting through this screen that he ended up getting rejected baseline. The help never shows up, and they give up a layup. So was Coach Cal correct that his team couldn't stay in front of the ball? Absolutely. But it wasn't because they couldn't guard one-on-one. It was because their ball screen coverage needs a lot of work. And it's important that you understand the difference so you know what problem to fix when teams keep getting to paint. If you learned something new, hit that like button. Thanks for coming through. We'll see you next time in the film room.